Hi there. My name is Michael Bruinix and I work at a hospital in an outpatient clinic here in Kingston, Ontario. I want to talk to you today about client-centered goal setting. I get a lot of requests during consultation to talk about how to collaborate with clients. Like, is it that we set the goal? Is it that we're trying to listen to them and only go after goals that they're interested in? So how do we strike a balance? What do we do? Where are we being directive? Where are we being empathic and listening? So I've designed a little presentation where I can help you with the overarching ideas around how to collaborate with people. The reason I think this is so important, the reason I think this is a fundamental skill, is whether you're a psychiatrist, a receptionist, a rehabilitation worker, a support worker, leadership, wherever you are in the mental health system, you're going to be working with someone's goals, your team, your organization. What is it that we're trying to achieve here? And oftentimes what we're looking for are process, choice, and change. And we're looking for a direction. We're looking for some kind of forward movement. And so there's things to consider when setting all of this up. And I'm just going to walk you through the training that I've had around goal setting. From working in an outpatient clinic for 5 years where I ran a goals group with people and done individual goals with people, either in a private practice setting or one-on-one, or doing other groups. Even when I'm running other groups, you can see that as people join groups such as people skills or mindfulness or managing powerful emotions, that there's goals even within the material, and then it's about how you share and what you do. So I'm going to walk you through some important concepts here around goal setting. Now, when I'm working with someone for the first time and I'm thinking about how to explain my concepts of goals, the first thing I ask is, what are your three? Meaning, if you had a schedule, imagine a schedule in your mind where you have morning, noon, and night, or morning, afternoon, evening. What would be the way that our client is going to be spending their time? One thing I like to do is give them a sheet that lists Monday through Sunday and morning, afternoon, and evening, and seeing how do they spend their time now. So one thing I like to do is kind of get a snapshot of how are they spending their time, and then noticing where do they want to change it. So for example, if they are at night, they're watching a lot of Netflix and they feel like they're not connecting with people, then it would be, how are we going to connect you with people rather than just sitting in your house isolating and watching Netflix. So when I think about working with a client, first thing I'm thinking about is, what does their week look like? So are they really busy in the morning? Does their energy lull in the afternoon? Where do they feel the most productive? Where do they feel like things are working? Where do things aren't working? And after I capture all that information, I start to think to myself about, what are your three? So the three goals are, what are three things that the client wants to accomplish in a day? That might be I've worked with some clients where they often go to bed at 3 a.m. and then they don't get up until noon. One goal might be, I'm going to start getting up at 10 a.m. I'm going to start going to bed a little bit earlier. So getting up at 10 a.m., that's one goal. Going to bed a little earlier, instead of going to bed at 3, it might be at 1. Okay, arguably, that's another goal. What I try to do here is I want them to spread it out. I find that when I'm working with clients, it's important to think, how do I make your morning start well? Think of a goal that you want to achieve. Afternoon, how do you keep the momentum? And then evening, what's something you want to do? Do you want to spend time with your family, playing board games? Do you want to connect with people, take a course online? So what we want to do here is, when we're thinking about goals, is how do we make their whole day good? By thinking about one key goal, morning, afternoon, and evening, that's a way of sort of extending their wellness, extending their connection to themselves, extending that feeling of positivity and optimism, because they're working at something all the time. There's never empty spots or dead spots. So many times when I work with clients, their afternoons aren't filled, or their mornings are a late start, or their evenings just, they don't know what to do with their time. So we have to start thinking about accomplishing 3 things a day. Now, what I like about this system is that if someone has challenges, like I've given this goal sheet, Monday through Sunday, morning, afternoon, and evening. Give them a sheet on one piece of paper. What happens is you can see a quick snapshot of their week. So if we have a worker in a long-term care home facility and there was a goals sheet up on the wall, the person can fill it in. It gives them something positive to connect to. It also gets to see where they're getting stuck, what types of things they're accomplishing. It creates a positive bond immediately. It's a very quick way to get a snapshot of what their week's looking like, what their energy's like, and what is important to them. What are the goals that they're fulfilling and following through with, and what are the ones that are getting stopped and dropping and falling behind. So when I think about this goals sheet and I think about 3 a day, it doesn't sound like much, right? It doesn't sound like a whole lot is happening. 3 a day translates into 21 goals a week because 3 times 7 is 21. Now, if we take 21 and we multiply it by 52 weeks in a year, that ends up being 1,092 goals. So what sounds like that, when I'm working with clients, I say, what are your 3 today? It doesn't sound like much, but it adds up. It has this compounding effect because over 1,000 goals a year, that's a huge thing. Now, the other thing I like about this method is the versatility of it. If someone is just working with their ADLs, like their daily activities, then they can say, like I've worked many times with people around just getting in the shower, doing your laundry, cleaning your kitchen. They can focus on the things that are important to them. What are your 3 today? And no problem, right? We can just measure those 3 where that client is right now. On the other hand, if they're, say, higher functioning and they're trying to continue going to work or they're attending school, their 3 might be, got to study for this exam, got to complete this project, I've got to apply for my OSAP or get an extension on this paper. So it doesn't matter where the client is in terms of their mental health. This is a very adaptable, malleable framework that lets everybody see very visually, very clearly what is being achieved and what is being left behind. So when we're thinking about goals, a lot of times people aren't really interested in the word goals. It's pretty much like, unless you're going to a gym and you're talking to a personal trainer or you're talking to a clinician or a therapist, like generally in our everyday world, we don't refer to goals a whole lot. It sounds sort of clinical, maybe even a little bit sterile, maybe a little unnatural. And so what I try to do here is I think to myself, why do people not achieve goals? Right? That's why I wrote those 3 ebooks about the shadow, the part of us that has these self-destructive behaviors, the part that gets in the way, the part year after year. For January 1st, we have a New Year's resolution. We don't call it a goal, we call it a resolution. And there we say, going to lose 10 pounds this year. And we do it year after year after year. Or, I'm going to go back to the gym. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to go do some volunteer work. And year after year, we let it go and we let it go and we let it go. Why do we give up on our goals? It sounds like to a part of us, it's so important to accomplish them. We would feel better if we accomplished them. We would feel better the way we look in the mirror or how much money we have in the bank if our goal is to save a certain amount of money per month, or what are we measuring? And then why are we resisting? To me, that's the central conversation in goals. So one of the things I often mention is when you are working on a goal, there's a couple of things that can kind of be implied here. First of all, when you're working on a goal, it implies that where you are right now isn't good enough, as though this version here would be better. So, this current version isn't as good. There can be some disparity around that. Often clients can idealize goals. They can think, like, if I was just able to go to the gym consistently, not like they think they're a better version of themselves, which is kind of true. So what happens is there's a part of us that doesn't like it because that's a form of conditional love. Like, I would care for myself more, or other people would care for me more if I was here. And the problem is that it starts to become addictive. Like, it's not just going to the gym. Now I've got to drop a certain amount of weight, or I've got to gain some muscle mass, or I've got to, start entering into half marathons and what have you. The problem is that goals seem to stem from dissatisfaction. It's not like we're content and satisfied with our lives. Often we're upset about something's pressing on us, and then we feel like we've got to change. Sometimes we even feel forced to change. So when we're thinking about goals, I think it's very important to think in the background, wait a minute, that client might have some thoughts that are maybe cognitive distortions, pathogenic beliefs, even constellation of beliefs that when paired together, they can cause real dysfunction. So for example, client says, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. And then they start weighing themselves all the time, or suddenly they're checking or feeling guilty if they have any kind of indulgence with their food. And maybe they're working on extra hard at the gym thinking, if I look like this, then people will care about me. Then people will respect me. And so there can be often an outward direction to it where it looks like they're setting an innocent goal, but actually it leads to a lot of other problems. People can be bulimic, have eating disorders. They can start to be obsessed with going to the gym, or conversely, they don't want to go even into the gym because they're worried about failing, and they're trying and they don't want to keep, with New Year's resolutions, how you can try and try and try again. After a while, you start feeling defeated, like this isn't going to work. I'm not going to work. I don't know what the matter is with me. Well, part of what can be the matter is that your very identity is at stake. If you change your body weight, you change your physical looks, if you change your job or move to another city or get a degree, what happens? You start to have a different identity, right? So if you can think about goals as being sort of a comfort zone, like their current level of functioning, their current level of achievement with goals is one identity. And if they get a degree, get a diploma, get that job, they start to think of themselves differently. So what happens is you can start having resistance inside to change because you're afraid of what you're going to become. You can be afraid of how that's going to turn out. I'm not talking about fear of success per se. I mean more like your identity is at stake. It's your who am I now? You know who you are at this level of functioning with whatever's going on in your life. It's fine. And so it's really important when I'm working with people to let them know I'm fine with the way they are. They don't actually have to change. If they want to work with me in a mental health organization, organizations have agendas such as, if you come, it's about process, choice, and change. There's things that you're going to be working on. We're going to be working together collaboratively. So I'm thinking about two main things when I'm working with goals. And one is about accepting them, caring for them as they are. And on the other hand, encouraging, inviting, seeing whether change is possible. And then I know that wherever they're struggling, whatever they're struggling with or whatever they're talking about a lot, that's where their identity is particularly at stake. In other words, there's some part of them that feels like maybe something's going to be lost, or it feels fake or false, or why can't you love me like right now as I am instead of I got to be this version of myself before you care about me. There's very, very deep dynamics that we're going to go into deeper here in this video. But I just want to set that up as some beginning starting points, some beginning questions to consider when working with someone collaboratively on their goals. Now, one of the things I've also noticed, either when I'm working with people or consulting with other clinicians, is goals often get taken very seriously. And I don't think that's necessarily the best place to be. When I was taking a course from Dr. Rex Kay from the University of Toronto a few years ago, he mentioned this idea of transitional space, which comes from the psychodynamic literature, where basically the idea, the atmosphere I try to create when I'm working with someone with goals, whether I'm in my individual office or in a group, is that this is a space of play, that it's like a laboratory where we're going to test different hypotheses. So it's perfectly fine. If you want to go out and you want to, say, change your sleep pattern, or you want to start riding your bike, getting out on some pathways like the K&P Trail, okay, what I do is I take the pressure off them by saying, let's just try it for a week. Let's just try it for a couple of weeks. What happens there is immediately it's not so serious. It's one of the things that happens is people start to think, oh, if I commit to that, I've got to keep committing to that. I've got to stay with it forever. But we don't know that. What we got to think about is, does this change actually increase their happiness, increase their contentment? I'll give you an example. When I was reading Medium, medium.com, it's a freemium app, meaning some of the articles are free, some you pay for. There was this one writer who mentioned he had seen over and over on the internet that getting up at 5 a.m. changes your quality of life. If you look on the internet space, you'll see a lot of successful people say their day starts with their morning routine. He had read over and over that getting up early was going to make your day start off right, your energy is right, then you're going to start achieving things better. And so after extensive research, this person decided to get up at 5 a.m. and they decided to stick with it for a while because they knew it was going to be hard at first, and they decided to commit to it for a year. And a year later, what was the report? The report was he hated getting up at 5 a.m. It wasn't for him. It is that was just too much for him. He found he had to go to bed too early. He found when he was getting up, other people weren't up. So what looked like a good goal, when he tried it, tested it, it's like a laboratory. We're just testing this hypothesis. Is this going to make your quality of life go up? We don't know. Found out, no, it doesn't. And so I often mention to people when they think about starting with a goal, you don't necessarily have to stick with it. Let's just see. I use all kinds of inviting words to make it feel like a transitional space. I try to create a safe environment where you can tell me what you're really thinking. So one of the things that I talk about when people come to me with a goals group can be 12 weeks long, 5 or 6 clients in the room, and then where each person is talking about what their goals are for next week and what their accomplishments were from last week. Really, really important that people can feel safe, and it's okay to say, yeah, I didn't get to it. I said I was going to do these 3 things, didn't do them. That's so important that people feel that sense of trust, that you're not judging them. I think the transitional space really has to tie in with being non-judgmental. If you're working with someone and they say, okay, I went to the gym 5 times last week, and you're super happy, you're like, wow, that's really amazing. Well, what have you just done? You might have set them up for, next week, if they don't go 5 times, maybe you're a little bit disappointed. In other words, the clinician or the worker, the way we set up goals, what we say is good or we say is bad, can start to set up patterns where the other person starts to feel a pressure around goals. And that's what I think I'm trying to get at here, is that goals often have this pressure to them. There's some kind of drive, some kind of push. And that's not always coming from a healthy place. And it doesn't always work, like the person getting up for 5 a.m. every day for a year. It doesn't always work out. We think something's going to make it better, and then it doesn't. So it's important to think about the concept of transitional space when working with someone with goals. In other words, relax, let it come back, just try things out. Let's just see how it goes. Maybe you slow it down. Things I try to pay attention to are, do they have pressured speech? Does it feel like it's kind of urgent? Are there any emotions attached to this goal? Have they ever tried to do this goal in the past? Say, like losing 10 pounds, where they've tried it, they've failed, they've felt defeated, discouraged. What's going on there? What is your approach this time? Learn from what happened other times when you tried to do it. Now let's move forward. Let's think optimistically, hopefully, and realistically. Let's give a trial period. There's all sorts of ways to kind of soften and lighten the mood and yet hold the person accountable. And I think transitional space is a very important concept to consider. There's also transitional space. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Glenn Gabbard has a basic primer on theoretical concepts in the psychoanalytic literature. And so transitional space is noted in there. So you could look up on Google Glenn Gabbard, transitional space. There's ways to look into this a little further, but I just want to touch on that to let you know this is an important concept when creating the right atmosphere for setting goals. Now, we can think, right, when we're sitting in front of a client, okay, a part of them may want to give up smoking marijuana, for example, and another part doesn't. There's advantages and disadvantages to both sides. Now, one of the things when I'm offering trainings and education and consultations, I'll say with a client is don't take sides. If a client, 20% of them on that day, 20% of them wants to stop smoking and 80% doesn't, okay, that's fine. Maybe a couple of weeks from now, it'll be the other way around. Now it'll be the part that doesn't want to smoke is much, much stronger, and then the other part's weaker. Now, the way I say this is that clients are going in a figure 8. They're going towards, I don't really want to smoke, and I'm thinking of the benefits of smoking marijuana. It calms me down. I don't have to deal with my anxiety. But yeah, it's costing me a lot, or my parents are getting on my case about it, or my friends are getting on my case. So then it goes back and forth like this. It could be too much drinking. It can be too much smoking. It can be not enough exercise. What you'll find with clients is there's a part of them that wants to change and a part of them that doesn't. And then they're going back and forth where they're figuring out for themselves, do I want to change this in my life or not? And so what I encourage you to do when working with someone is don't take sides. Don't say smoking is good or smoking is bad. Now, why would I say smoking is good? Now, the reason I would say smoking cigarettes is good is because sometimes there are more self-harming behaviors underneath. So the smoking is covering up, so you take away smoking, what do they start doing? Maybe they start overeating, maybe they start drinking. You see, wherever their behaviors are kind of locked in, wherever you're noticing that resistance to changing their identity, often there are deep beliefs, deep emotions, deep experiences that are siloed underneath those behaviors. Very important to explore and understand the mechanics of that before you start adjusting things. This is again why you want to take sort of an experiential and experimental approach. But regardless of when they come in on a particular week and they say, okay, I tried this change. I'm cooking for myself 5 nights a week. I'm cooking healthy. Okay, no problem. I don't suddenly say, yes, that's great. That's amazing. I wait and see. Okay. As they try to do that, do they notice that other things start falling apart in their life? Easy example. I had a client once who said she wanted to reduce her smoking cigarettes from 20 down to 3. I said, why 3? She said that was the best she ever felt. It was when she was smoking 3 cigarettes. In other words, that's the best her mental health ever was. As she tried to get down from 20 down to even 11, she was white knuckling it. She was very stressed out. It was putting a great strain on her. And I said, why would you go through this strain? It looks like you're having other trouble with, say, arguing with your partner or getting out of bed in the morning. See, when you change one thing, it has other effects in other areas. We know this when we try to do it for ourselves. So I was kind of questioning, do you need to go all the way down to 3? It looks like 3 is really stressing you out. 3 cigarettes a day is stressing you out. Why don't you try, say, something like 14? She's like, no, I want to quit this. I want to stop this. And so you can see that when you try to change these behaviors on the surface, it's like an ocean. There's currents down below that are deeply influencing people to either stay where they are or try and change things or move them around. So as they're moving from I want to change whatever behavior is to no, I don't, yes, I do, no, I don't, very important, we just don't take sides. We let them figure it out, listen to both sides, weigh out what the pros and cons are, what are the emotions that are coming up for you as you consider changing this behavior, and what can you do right now, this week, trying your 3 a day, what can you do that's going to change it enough that it's comfortable, it doesn't make you lose your control, where you start becoming emotionally dysregulated or you start having problem areas in other areas, the ones that you didn't touch on or address, but now you're noticing sometimes habits can kind of cover other things that are in place. So, example, at night, I have worked with lots of clients that want to stop eating at night. 8 o'clock comes by, they've already eaten a good meal, but what happens? They want a piece of chocolate cake out of their fridge. Okay, no problem. You can have one, but what happens is there's a voice inside on Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, I want that piece of chocolate cake, and then they're getting upset with themselves. But see, that chocolate cake is kind of representing something. Maybe they feel like they've had a hard day and they need to reward themselves. Or maybe it would feel like if you took that piece of chocolate cake away that they're denying themselves or that they're making themselves suffer. See, the beliefs that are underneath, the emotions that are underneath, how we assign that behavior is really important, our relationship to that behavior. Now, goals, if you're looking on the internet, if you're looking, like I did extensive research on goals, and what I found is a lot of people just call them habits. So what are our good habits? What are our bad habits? There's books by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. We've got James Clear, Atomic Habits. If you look at the videos by Tony Robbins, he goes on and on about habits, as does Gary Vee and Grant Cardone, and there's Tim Ferriss. What some people are arguing is that when we're saying about your identity being at stake is that when you have your habits in place, the habits that you are, I'm a smoker, or I'm a CrossFitter, or I work, at a bank, is It's a habit of going to the bank every day. It's a habit I eat healthy meals or I don't. Or I love going to a pool hall and ordering wings and beer with my friends. See, these are all habits. And so if habits stay there long enough, it becomes part of our identity. This is the real challenge when you're thinking about goals is what habits do I want to create? What habits do I want to stop? So when these are the things in the background that I consider when I'm working with clients. I'm looking at all the context, all the background noise, what is going on cognitively, what's going on emotionally, what's going on physically inside of them as we discuss these habits. It's very, very important to consider these things and see if that changing sort of what's in the background helps them change the habit or the goal that's in the foreground that they're paying attention to right now. Because oftentimes those habits and goals have a long story connected to them as to why they did or didn't do it. I've worked with one client there. She said she came from a family of smokers. Her grandparents smoked on both sides. Her parents smoked, right? Her siblings smoked. She felt like she was powerless. She couldn't do anything. She's a smoker. She comes from a family of smokers. See how your identity is so baked in there? Just over one thing. So if you come from a family of jocks, or you come from a family of lawyers or teachers or educators, you can sometimes start to think like, I can't break from that. I can't break from my family story. Goals are often woven into who do I think I am, where am I going, what you consider success, what do you think makes you happy, what brings you peace. These are all things that can be affected by gender, education, your race, your age, where geographically where you live, like what other people around you are doing, like what I think is interesting is that if you deconstruct goals and you look at them as a set of habits, you start to really, at a deeper level, you can start to question, what is success? What do I think is success? Where have I had success in the past? Where was I in my best physical shape? Where was I in my best financial shape? When have I had the best relationships in my life? So you want to draw off your client's strengths, and you also want to educate where there's gaps or where there's distorted thinking, where there's thinking that's conflicting, where one thing is like you shouldn't smoke and the other is you should go to the gym, and yet that's not what's happening. They're fighting really hard to even get to the gym, and they're fighting really hard to stop smoking. So clearly there's a story underneath there like an iceberg. You're seeing the behaviors at the tip, and then down below there's a story that goes deep, and if the greater the resistance, the bigger the story. So this is part one of this video on goal setting, client-centered goal setting. In this next video, I'm going to show you how I think about using my approach and then getting into some specifics around how I set up goals and how I sequence goals. So I'll see you in the next video shortly. Thanks for your time.